Welcome to Chick Chat with Unapologetically Karen, the podcast for women by women. I'm Karen Webb, architect, author, entrepreneur, creative junkie, and your host. Chick Chat is your resource for building your big, bold, and beautiful feminine life. So join me for some eye-opening and jaw-dropping dialogue that has people talking. Welcome back, everyone. Here we are at Chick Chat, and today's guest is Genevieve Pituro. She is a TEDx speaker, 7 times award-winning Amazon best-selling author, consultant, and the founder of Pajama Program. Genevieve's journey has taken her from a little girl's question in a homeless shelter to Oprah, to boardrooms and stages across America to talk about purpose, the human connection, and how to be a voice that makes the world or moves the world. A successful TV executive, Genevieve dramatically changed the direction of her life and found her purpose when a little 6-year-old girl's question rocked her world, and she jumped off that corporate ladder. In 2001, Genevieve founded the hugely successful national organization called Pajama Program, and she has written 2 books on purposeful leadership and launching a legacy. Her 7 times award-winning Amazon bestseller, Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas, I love that name, How to Transform Your Life, Embrace the Human Connection, and Lead with Meaning, debuted during the COVID shutdown to rave reviews, as its message dovetails with our nation's interest in the power of purpose and the human connection. Genevieve's second book, Purpose, Passion, and Moxie, How to Lead the Way and Leave a Legacy, is a workbook to help you start a nonprofit from scratch to success that was released September 2023. She teaches how to be a voice that moves the world and has been interviewed on Oprah, The Today Show, Good Morning America, The Early Show, CNN, Fox and Friends, Hallmark's Home and Family, and the show Huckabee and O Magazine, Forbes, oh my goodness, and the Wall Street Journal. We are lucky to have you here. And she rang the NASDAQ bell. Oh my God, that must have been fun in 2016. Welcome, Genevieve. It's a pleasure to have you.
It's so nice to be here. And I love the name of your podcast.
Oh, thank you. So I did, in doing my research, I did see your Oprah interview, which was very impressive. So why don't you tell us a little bit, kind of where you were at in life and what caused you to kind of really dig deep for your purpose?
Sure. Happy to. I never could have imagined that what happened, but it's still incredible to me. But I was climbing that corporate ladder. I always wanted to be an independent woman in a big city. And for me, that was New York, where I lived. And so I did that. And it was really contrary to my parents' dreams for me. My father's off the boat from Italy and my mom was Italian too. And so they expected their firstborn to follow the traditional, get married, have children, have grandchildren for them. And I just was not into that dream. And I just would sneak down and watch Mary Tyler Moore show and see Mary Richards, that single woman, having fun and adventures and just climbing the corporate ladder. And I thought, that's really cool. I want to do that. I want to be independent. So I followed that dream for 12 years in New York. And I worked in TV and I climbed and climbed. It was a workaholic life, like in any city. And I was single and, just really, really busy and having fun, enjoying it. And one day I heard a voice in me that asked a simple question. And I don't know I know where it came from now, but I didn't suspect it at all. And it asked me, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough?
Yes.
And oh my goodness, that shocked me because, like I said to you, I always thought I knew what I wanted to do. And it wasn't staying home and being, a housewife and a mom and all of that. I figured if that was something that would come later, that's fine. But so that voice in me sort of startled me and woke me up to just realize that if I didn't change, that I would feel empty in 30 years, sitting there, just having nice things and working so hard, but I be alone
And
still.
and I think let me just pause for a
Mm,
second there because that's so powerful. I've also written a book on really how to be the architect of your life, which is about finding passion and purpose and making your life more meaningful. So I get
mhm.
it, and I think you're right. We get that haunting question, which is like, is this all there is? And life needs more meaning, and I think for human beings it does. So how old were you again when you first heard that question?
I was about
Yeah,
35, 36.
that's
That's
interesting.
the age,
That's
right?
about the age I
Yeah,
was. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So it's very interesting. So go ahead. I completely understand where you're coming from. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. So, I within minutes, it all was like an avalanche. I was thinking my parents, maybe there was something to what they said, and of course, I loved the family that I was raised in, and I thought maybe there's a way to bring kids into my life because I did feel empty, and I felt that 30 years from then I would be even more empty and alone. And I thought maybe there's a way to bring children into my life because I loved my nieces and nephews. I mean, I loved children around. So I called shelters because I had seen a news report of police and social workers taking children out of a very dangerous home. And I called and I said, where do you take children like that in the middle of the night? And they gave me the name of some shelters. And every city has them. Those are emergency shelters for those types of incidences.
Right.
And I called some and I asked them if I could come in and visit with the children. I thought maybe just, to keep them company or keep them calm. And they said that'd be great, and you could come and read if you want. And I thought, wow, okay. And all of a sudden I thought, yeah, my mom read to us before bedtime. Maybe I could read to them after work. So I got a whole bunch of children's books. And in my suit, I went to one of the shelters, and they led me to sort of I guess it was a playroom for the kids, but there were no chairs that I could fit into. So I sat on the floor in my business suit, opened the bag of children's books and waited. And in, a few minutes, little faces appeared at the door with, care worker. And she ushered these little kids in, about a dozen of them, and told them to sit with a nice lady who was going to read them a story. And right then and there, my heart just opened. I could
Really?
almost
Hmm.
feel it. It was like no other feeling I'd ever had.
Wow.
I just wanted to scoop them up because I could see, any of us could see that they were torn apart, that they were so afraid and lonely. And their clothes were soiled and they didn't fit well and they were afraid. And some of them had been crying and were crying. And I couldn't even breathe. A million
Oh my
stimuli
goodness.
coming at
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
sat down and I opened the book and I read for about 45 minutes. They were silent, looking at me, looking around. This was an emergency shelter. This was new to them. 1 or 2 days they'd been there. And I felt so grounded, but I felt so disturbed. And I felt I was taking on their pain. So I went back and I went back and I went back, and the same thing, different children. One night before I left, I decided to follow. I wanted to see where they were going to sleep at night. I don't know why, Karen. I don't know why
Huh.
each step
Of course.
unfolded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I peered in, and there were futons and couches. One or two children helped up on a cot or some kind of a surface. And I could see the same, the same feeling of loneliness and just trying to get comfortable. And some of them were together and holding on to each other. And they were in their clothes, the same that they had been wearing for reading and for how long, I don't know. And I had this mirage of memories of my mom and our bedtimes at home when I was little. And it all came back to me. I'd never thought about it for 35, 36 years. And it was just full of joy and love and laughter and stories and snacks and, don't leave, mom, tell me another story.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
still,
You're making me tear up. I absolutely can feel
I
this.
just,
Go ahead.
yeah,
Oh.
I just saw that while I'm staring at the scene I'm staring at. And they had to sort of push me out because I guess I was frozen. And as they were walking me to the door, I don't know why I turned and I said, can I bring some pajamas next time? And to this day, when I say that to you, Karen, I still can remember saying to myself, where'd that question come from?
Hmm.
And they said, that'd be lovely. No one thinks of that. So I brought pajamas the next time. And after I read to those children, I started handing them out. I got so many, so nobody would be left out. I have the right sizes, the right colors, everything. And I started handing them out. There was a little girl who came up to my hips, and she was just so so lonely. And she had on a soiled top that had pink in it and lavender, and short pants, like we used to call them floods. And her
Mm-hmm.
pigtails were lopsided. And I kept trying to give her a pair of pink that I thought would fit because she had pink in her shirt. And she would just back away from me and just shake her head, no, no, no. And I didn't know what was wrong. The other kids took them quietly and then went into that room. But she was watching me and didn't want to take anything from me. And finally, she was the last one. She was still standing there with one of the women. And I went back over and I knelt down with that pair of pajamas and I tried to gently coax her into touching them, feeling them. And I said, you could keep them, because I didn't know what her reservation was.
Right,
You don't have to
right.
give them back. Nobody's going to take them. They're all for you. You can wear them all day tomorrow. I bet it'll be okay. They're so soft. You want to feel them? Don't you want your pajamas? And she leaned in and she just timidly asked me, what are pajamas?
Oh my goodness.
And she couldn't even
Oh my
say it.
goodness.
She just
Yeah.
stuttered with a P because she'd only heard me say it a few times.
Mm.
And I had to collect myself, and I was on one knee, and I really had to steady myself because I mean, if my head could have blown off, I would have. I
Yeah.
just was so. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money growing up, but what we had pajamas, we had love, and I couldn't imagine everything that was missing in her life. This little girl,
Yes.
and I just had to gently explain pajamas to her, while half of my brain was telling her what pajamas were. The other half was saying, oh my God, what I can't not do anything. I have to change this. And
Wow.
that was the
Wow.
beginning of
That is
everything.
amazing. That is such a beautiful story. So you left corporate America then at that point?
No, I ran up credit cards, got into big debt, tried to hold on to both because I had a mortgage. I had a life.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah,
bills.
of
I was
course.
single. I didn't know what this thing was that I felt or that I was doing, how long it would last, how long I'd be welcome.
Right.
And I rehearsed in my head, who's I going to say, listen, I think I'm going to quit. I know I have no money because I've never been a saver. I know I have a mortgage, but these kids, they need pajamas. And every
Yeah.
time I said that to myself, I thought, oh my goodness, sounds
Like, what
ridiculous.
am I doing? Yeah.
What am I
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah.
You know? And so I just kept doing it on the side, and I just kept literally, I'm not a saver. I'm not, I didn't plan for it. And I know that, and I teach, there's a way that moxie is what I call it, will get you through a lot of things. And that's all
Yes.
I can attribute the initial success to, is that I just kept picturing her. I kept hearing her. And I just kept thinking, it'll work out. It'll work out. It's okay.
Yeah.
The bills are coming. But I knew that I was in a predicament because I didn't know how to even articulate and I had no plan.
Right. Right. Okay. Wow. My goodness. So then, well, first of all, um, yeah, that is such a powerful. So first off, how did you feel just having when did you realize this is a passion? I've just discovered my purpose on this earth. And then how did you handle the money?
Well, I didn't know, nobody ever asked me when I was growing up,
Mhm.
you need to find your purpose. What are you meant to do? It
Most
was
people
really
don't.
hard.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I teach an exercise now for 90 minutes. No one ever told me to sit quietly with pen and paper and to evaluate, what was important to me, my values. I mean, so I didn't even know the word purpose. I didn't know what this was except an obsession that I couldn't stop
Yes.
thinking about
Okay.
purpose.
Huh. Okay.
So, I kept messing up my job, and I knew either I was going to have to quit or I was going to get fired. So I went to part-time, made up all kinds of excuses. I was never the type to leave early and come in late, and I was doing all of that. And they knew something was wrong, but I couldn't tell anyone. So, I first tried to tell a girlfriend, and I literally invited her for a drink, and I had two glasses of wine before she arrived,
Oh,
and I had rehearsed
okay.
the same thing. And I told her exactly what I told you a few minutes ago. And she looked at me and she said, are you crazy? Why? You have spent 12 and a half years to get where you are, and you're going, where you want to be. Can't you just do this like on Saturday afternoon? I don't understand. What are you throwing it all away for? And then I clammed up again for another 6 months because that was the one response I feared.
Right. Right.
So
Okay.
there was no support, I felt. But
I
what
see.
happened was I couldn't, I was on the subway with bags and I was making a mess of everything. And I met a nice guy, and I was, dating him, and I knew what I was doing. He didn't know. He thought I had a great job, and that if we hooked up, he didn't have a corporate job either. He was on his own. So lean times and good times back and forth. So I knew what he thought, that I was stable in my work. And I said to him, look, I don't know where this is going, but you have to know that I met this little girl and I did the whole story and I just
Right.
spilled it. And he said, I think you should go for it. So that was he was the very first person who didn't
Wow.
tell me I was crazy. I married him later.
Oh, good move. Good move there.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
what
he
happened was,
understood the value
yes,
of having that passion and purpose. Yeah.
he did before I did. And then, he would drive me around. So I was always on the subways in the neighborhoods that weren't the best with, sacks
Yes.
of
Yes.
pajamas, putting me in precarious situations. So he would take me around and I would do all this. And, I vowed to work in McDonald's if I had to. And one day somebody called from a national magazine and said, are you the lady bringing pajamas to
Pajamas.
kids in shelters?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. And she said, can I write a little story? And I said, sure. So she said, it's just going to be like, 5 sentences or whatever. And I said, okay, that's great. And then 9/11 happened, 9/11 happened, and then the story ran. And I came home and I was bombarded with boxes and letters. I couldn't believe the
Wow.
doormen were yelling at me, thinking I was doing something illegal. What was I, starting a business?
Yeah.
They were throwing the boxes in the elevator and shouting at me to send the elevator down. There were more. And my new husband and I were watching in my this one bedroom, boxes up to, our foreheads. And we were eating and sleeping on them for 24 hours,
Oh
a
my
day, trying to keep
goodness.
coming. And we
Yeah.
opened them, pajamas and books from people who read the story, who got it in the mail, their subscription before the newsstand. Because I knew it wasn't on the newsstand. So I didn't
Oh,
understand.
wow.
That's what happened. And because one letter from a company said, please send us your 501c3 so we can give you a grant, I literally took it. I showed my new husband. I said, what is this thing?
Yeah.
501c3.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
He didn't know.
nonprofit, right? Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I learned, and I looked at, thousands of pajamas, cash, books, everything, letters. And I realized this is a responsibility and this is a decision has to be made. And I said, I better find out what this 501c3 is, because it looks like I could get some grant money and get myself, all the pajamas and
Wow.
books I need, and maybe, get out of debt and not lose everything. And
Right.
slowly begged, borrowed, lots of help, because I was in debt, and
Yeah. But then you
good
got
people,
there.
good
Wow.
people who felt her pain the way I did.
That's a beautiful story. Wow. Wow. So do you still go and read or bring the pajamas? How are things now?
Well, now we're 24 years old. I'm
Wow.
the founder. So I was the executive director for the first 20. We opened reading centers, one in our headquarters in New York City and several around the US, where kids would come. We'd bus them in from the shelters, from places that would benefit from reading with volunteers and getting
Mm-hmm.
pajamas, and now learning a bedtime routine because we don't get enough sleep. Imagine these kids, what they've been through, and the families
Absolutely.
needing some support in that area if they have family that they're living with. So the reading centers, the kids would be filled up in those reading centers every day. And I decided after 20 years, because I'd been asked a lot to speak and to tell the story in the hopes of inspiring and supporting others who also didn't know what first steps to take, I was always honest. These are the right things I did, and these are the wrong things I did.
Right? I mean, might as well, because I think it's true, especially for someone who's living like that, gutsy and going after something with drive. You're going to make mistakes. I mean, that's just part of it because you're jumping in with both feet. So, yeah, if we can learn from the mistakes, always good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
very
passed the
good.
baton of executive director, and Jamie Dice is doing a great job, and she's taken it up a notch with the bedtime experience for these children. And I
Wow.
am speaking. So my work now is speaking, and I've written 2 books. I'll write another, and coaching and teaching, leadership skills when when you have that drive and that passion, and
Yeah. Yeah.
how
And
to
I think
do it.
now let's for a second. So when I first started studying all this, et cetera, I'm an architect by trade, but then
Oh,
so then I went through my own just messy divorce. And that's really when everything kind of fell apart, is when I started really looking at this notion of having a passion and a purpose. And for me, I am lucky that my passion is architecture and I get to
mm,
do what I love, but not everybody can make a
mhm,
living at what their
mhm,
passion is at first.
right.
But having done that and then having spoken to many people who have, um, how do you feel? I mean, I think that it changes their outlook on life
Hmm.
completely from kind of just going through the daily grind to then knowing you have this passion and purpose. What have you noticed?
Yes. Well, first, all the people in your world change. I think there are 5 people in my life, not
Interesting.
including my family, that I even, maybe not even five, from my, you know, 12 to
Pri-
15 years in another world,
yeah.
another business. Um, it's just, you gravitate toward others who get it, especially in the beginning, because I needed
Yes.
to get advice. I knew nothing. I needed a mentor. I needed an attorney. I needed, um, a CPA. I needed the people that lived in that world I was entering. I needed a board. And though every single one of them knew more than I did, and every single one of them I begged for freebies because, I explained. And
Yeah.
so those people that give are leading from their heart first. And I just posted today your heart and your head and the difference in, making the switch. And so that's the number one thing I tell people when I coach them and mentor them. Expect your people to change.
Right, your world to change. Yeah,
Yeah, your world's
absolutely. I
going to
think
change.
you're right. Yeah, because you're going from kind of living at a very, I don't know, I always call it sort of surviving level
Hmm.
to thriving and really, experiencing life in a much deeper, more significant
Fuller.
way. Yeah,
Yeah.
much more. And not only does it fulfill you and inspire you, but then your reach is even bigger because you're sharing that. I love your story. So tell me the names again, and we can share with everyone the books and where they can get them.
Purpose, Passion, and Pajamas. That's how to
Yes.
transform your life and embrace the human connection. That one's the first one. That's the story of the ups and downs, um, and the successes and the whole meaning of the human connection. And the number one
Yes.
lesson, it's not the power of one that changes things. It's the power of one another that moves mountains
Oh,
and
I
moves
love that.
people.
Very
So
true. Wow. And they
yeah,
can get
and
that on Amazon or on your website, or where's the
either,
best way?
either, either
Okay,
they can find
great.
it on my website, but it'll lead you to different retailers. And the other one, because, after COVID, so many people were interested in nonprofit work.
Hmm.
There was such a surge, which was because
Really?
we had, we had a life scare. And I think
Yes.
everybody
Yes.
really had a reckoning. Is this what I want to do tomorrow whenever we get out of this mess? And a
Right.
lot of
Right.
people said no. And a lot of people said, yes, but I'm going to be I want to do something else. I've always wanted to, do this and help here. And a lot of people are starting even now, nonprofits. So I was getting a lot of calls for help to help. And so I wrote this workbook, and I do sometimes webinars, and I'm doing some leadership webinars. And I talk about purpose, passion, and moxie, how to start with
Hmm.
nothing, and, grow a success and bring other people in and, you know, create a movement the best that, you can to change the world, to move the world.
Right, right. That's just so powerful. Your legacy is huge, and I can't imagine how many to date. Do you even know how many pajamas you've given out? Okay, share this
We sure
massive
do. More
number.
than more than 8 million pajamas books.
Oh
We
my
across the
goodness!
US. We have 40 some chapters and some reading centers.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, there are so many people, that's why I say the power of one another. So many people who we have Jamie leads a small staff, and we have volunteers everywhere, everything from drives to retailers donating to, campaigns we do because there are times of the year when we need more. So
Wow.
yeah,
And if our listeners, I'm sure it's going to hit a chord with many of our listeners. If they want to donate some pajamas, what should they do?
go to pajamaprogram.org, O-R-G. And if you want to do anything else that you can't find on that website, then find me and I'll make an introduction and I can see if I
Beautiful.
can
Okay,
find a way to
good.
connect
Yes,
you.
definitely. That would be fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to ask our listeners to please, yeah, please, take a step because just like Genevieve says, it is about the power of one another. I love that. And if anything, this is a sisterhood that this entire podcast is all about. So, um,
Thank you.
yeah, wonderful. Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so impressed and I'm so happy to have had you on here because it was surprising to me. What's so notable is that, we know and hear about all the difficulties and we know about shelters and we know, all of these things are going on, but something so simple and like we never have thought of. What about pajamas? I
Mhm.
mean, and what I think that because it's so much more than that. It's about something that
Transition.
makes you
Yeah.
feel snuggled and
Yeah.
cozy and
Safe
protected and
and
cared
protected.
for and
Yes.
all of
Yes.
those things. So it's
Yeah.
quite meaningful. It's beautiful.
Yes. And the
So,
bedtime bond, I've heard a million stories from so
oh
many
yes.
moms and foster moms and adopted children and children with, living with natural families about the bonding and those moments
Yes.
at bedtime that I never thought about for, you know,
It's
decades.
so true. My daughter
Hmm.
has two
Hmm.
children, so I have two grandsons now, and bedtime is a whole routine, and
Hmm.
it's like,
Hmm.
and the book and how many books and the snuggling with it, and it's really a priceless time. Yeah, that's
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
do think a lot of our country, sadly, probably mostly since COVID and because of, um, has a lot of feeling of isolation. And this
Hmm.
is, and lack of human connection. This is a beautiful way to kind of counteract that. So
Thank you.
thank you
I hope
so
help
much
people
for,
feel it.
yes. And if people want to reach out to you, is it,
Mhm.
is there an email
It's
or social?
GenevievePituro.com. It's my website. I speak and I write and I
Okay.
consult.
So
So it's
everybody
my
can look at that.
name.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll have the spelling clear for everyone on this.
I know it's a
Wonderful.
long name.
It is. It's a long one, but it's good. All right. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate having you.
Thank you for the invitation, Karen.